Welcome to City Church's On-Demand Messages. My name is Josh, and we're so glad that you're tuning in whenever and wherever you're tuning in from. In fact, it's possible that you either stumbled across this online or somebody shared this, and you are leading it maybe for the first time. If you have any questions or want to know more about who we are, we'd love for you to visit our website. In fact, if you can even plan your first visit on our website. If you've got kids, we have a kids ministry specifically for them. You can plan your visit. You can go ahead and check them in, learn more about what that will be like. Maybe a middle or high school student, we've got you covered. And so if you have any questions or anything that we can do for you, please just check out our website. Today's message is going to be very special, and we're thankful that you're tuning in. It'll be anywhere from 25 to 30 minutes. And so if we can do anything for you, please let us know. But enjoy today's message. Well, good morning. My name's Josh, and so glad that you're here. I'm one of the pastors here and just excited to jump into this series. So in high school, I played basketball, and we were at an away game, and I had to go to the restroom in the locker room. And so I went to go into the locker room and use the restroom. And you're like, this is the first time this is getting really personal. It is. So I go to these restrooms, and they don't have doors on the stalls. And what they have is the little science project triptychs. You guys remember those things, the three-sided things? And so I set it there, and it's actually it's an old science project. And so the science project is there, and you know there's different titles for everything, and at the end of this, you get to the conclusion. And I saw that tag there, and I said, guys, to my senior, as a senior playing basketball, guys, I would like to be called the conclusion from now on, because when it comes to basketball, I end things. And I was like, this is going to stick, and this is going to change everything. Well, we lost that game, and it changed nothing, and it never stuck at all. And so there are some names that don't change everything, but there are some that do. And this morning, the question that we have for you, the question to get us rolling is this. Is the change that you desire the change that you are experiencing? Is the change that you want to see happen in your life, is it the change that you are experiencing? Maybe another way to put this is, are you living the change that you desire? You see, for many of us, there is the change that we desire to see happen in our lives, and there is the change that we actually experience, and there is a gap in between that. And we try to fill this gap with so many things to get us from point A to point B, and the question we have to ask is, what is the thing that will actually change and move those things closer together? Because Christmas for us is a chance to change. It's a chance to experience change if we actually receive it, and we actually step into it. But also Christmas is a reminder of things that haven't yet changed in our lives, right? It's the sickness that hasn't yet gone away. It's the family member that's not healthy yet. It's the ring finger that is still empty. It's the pregnancy test that is still negative. It's the friend that won't text back. It's the addiction that won't go away. Christmas is this reminder that change is possible, but for many of us, it's also this reminder that change still hasn't happened. And this morning, we have an opportunity to change. And if you're here and you're feeling that, like there's this change that I want to have, but I'm not there yet, then you would actually fall in line with the rest of humanity for all of time. In fact, this morning, we're going to be in a book called Isaiah. There's a letter in the Bible that tells us about a group of people that aren't where they want to be and about a promise from a prophet that has the potential to change everything. So the book of Isaiah, you can turn there. Here's a couple things about it. It was written 700 years before the birth of Jesus. Isaiah is a prophet. A prophet is someone who would come to comfort or caution God's people of what's to come. And so Isaiah is doing a lot of cautioning. There's this king called Ahaz. That Ahaz was a king that had other gods that he would worship. In fact, at one point, Ahaz sacrificed his own son to a false god to honor that god. I mean, this is who this king was, and this is what the Israelites, God's people, were living in. They were in a rough time, and they were turning away from God instead of turning to him. You see, they were stuck in between what they desired and what was actually happening. So we're going to be in Isaiah chapter 9 this morning, and I'm going to jump into verse 1 just to kind of show us some differences in what was going on in their lives. And so Isaiah chapter 9, verse 1, this is Isaiah prophesying. He says, "But there will be no gloom for her who was in anguish." So the verse before this tells us exactly what the context is here. Isaiah chapter 8, it says, "And they will look to the earth, but behold, distress and darkness, the gloom of anguish, and they will be thrust into the thick darkness." Merry Christmas. So Israel is going to experience this time of incredible gloom and darkness. This is what's happening and is going to happen to them. So when we jump back to chapter 9, verse 1, we see that there will be no more gloom for them. But then he uses a word, in the former time, he brought into contempt the land of Zebulun and the land of Naphtali. So there was a former time of gloom. Now, what's happening and what's being prophesied is something that we hear about in the book previous to this called 2 Kings. 2 Kings chapter 15 tells us this. In the days, these are fun names. In the days of Pekah, king of Israel, Tiglath-Pileser, king of Assyria, came and captured Ehon, Abel-Beth-Maachah, Genoa, Kadesh, Hazar, Gilead, and Galilee, all the land of Naphtali, and he carried the people captive to Assyria. So this gloom and darkness of the former time that Isaiah is talking about is when the king of Assyria was going to come and take over and take control of these people, of the Israelites. So when we jump back into chapter 9, verse 1, we see this gloom and former time where they were going to be taken captive. But then he says, but in the latter time, so later, he has made glorious the way of the sea, the land beyond the Jordan, Galilee, and the Galilee of the nations. So there is this gap between gloom and glory, the change they want and the change that they're actually experiencing right now. And what Isaiah says is there's this gap here, and there's a time that is coming where glory will come, but right now you're living in gloom. Some of you feel that way right now. It's just a gloomy time. Maybe the season brings that up, or maybe it's just a season of your life that you're in. But you feel like you are in a time and a season of gloom. He goes on, verse 2, and here's what he says. The people who walked in darkness have seen a great light. Those who dwelt in the land of deep darkness, on them has light shone. So again, we see the gloom and glory, what is and what is not yet. We see darkness and great light is coming. We see a darkness that they're walking in right now and a light that is coming. Isaiah is saying there is a movement coming from where it will move God's people from gloom to glory and darkness to light. There is a movement coming and a movement happening. And Isaiah is telling them about this, although you haven't seen this yet, it is coming. Between what is and what should be. Can I tell you today, if you're in a season of gloom, there's movement that is coming. And a movement that is here. Between what is in your life and what could be and what should be. And so Isaiah is trying to get these people to understand that something is coming. And then he shares an incredible Christmas announcement. An incredible Christmas announcement. And maybe you've heard Christmas announcements before, like, hey, like some of you started announcing Christmas was coming back in October. We aren't friends. Christmas came the day after Thanksgiving. Okay? Amen? All right, here we are. No, some of us make Christmas announcements in July. Christmas is coming. Some of us don't make Christmas announcements at all. Some of us are like from the top of our lungs playing Christmas music all year long, and some of us only stick in the month of December. My people, we know Christmas announcements. In fact, there's one Christmas announcement. When I think of Christmas announcements, honestly, this is what I think of.
Sure? Yes, I'm sure. Just do your job.
Okay. Wow.
This is the North Pole.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
No, it isn't.
Yes, it is.
No, it isn't.
Yes, it is.
No, it's not. Where's the snow?
Why are you smiling like that?
I just like to smile. Smiling's my favorite.
Make work your favorite. That's your favorite, okay?
Okay.
Work is your new favorite.
Fine.
It's time for the announcement. Okay, people, tomorrow morning, 10 a.m., Santa's coming to town.
Santa! Santa here? I know him. I know him.
He'll be here to take pictures with all the children.
Yeah.
Just keep your receipts. 10 a.m. tomorrow.
10 a.m. tomorrow.
Santa's coming to town.
Yes.
Can you sign this for me?
Oh, hi. Santa's coming.
So as famous as that Christmas announcement is, Isaiah says, hey, for all of you, For all of you, for all of you that are wondering when your season of gloom will turn into glory, when the darkness will come to light, Isaiah says, I've got an announcement, a Christmas announcement. And here's his announcement. Verse 6, for to us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government shall be upon his shoulder, and his name shall be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. This is Isaiah's Christmas announcement that would change everything. The names that would change and can change and will change, we believe, everything. He makes a statement, the government shall be upon his shoulder, which is a powerful statement, especially for someone who is feeling the wrath of Assyria, who is taking them over, and the oppression that they are experiencing right now and they see coming. And what Isaiah says is everything, the government, everything will rest on the shoulders of what kind of ruler this child who is to be born is. And so then he does something that kings would do back in the day and still do now. He gives him something called monikers. Monikers were names assigned to a king to describe the king, to bring power and respect. And so he has 4 monikers. He will be called, his name will be Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. For the next 4 weeks, we're going to walk through what these names are because they are incredibly important. Because in this list, we don't just discover the names of Jesus. We see the nature in his names, and in his nature, we see how he meets our needs. So we see the nature of who Jesus is in his names. And within his names and his nature, we see in these how he wants to meet our needs. He wants to be a wonderful counselor to you. He wants to be a mighty God. He wants to be an everlasting Father. He wants to be a Prince of Peace. Make sure you do not miss Christmas at City Church, December 23rd, 4 o'clock and 5:30. That was a quick little plug because we're talking about Prince of Peace there. He wants to be these things. He is these things to you, but he wants to be them personally to you. And so today we're going to talk about the first one. Wonderful Counselor. The word wonderful, the actual word in the original text is actually Pela. So say Pela with me. Pela, awesome. It means beyond understanding. So what wonderful means is simply there are some things that words cannot describe. Like they can't touch, we can't grasp, words can't describe it. That's what this word wonderful means. And then he says counselor, which is Yahweh. Say Yahweh. Yahweh simply means one who advises, instructs, or guides from a position of authority. From a position of authority. So this wonderful counselor is beyond words, and also he comes from a place to guide and instruct from authority. What I love about the name Wonderful Counselor is it means that Jesus came for people with problems. I don't know if you got problems, but I got problems, okay? Jesus came for people with problems. If you think about it, every miracle that Jesus did, it started with a problem. Every single one. He came for people with problems. He came not for the healthy, but for the sick. And we see his very nature in how James writes about him. James chapter 1, verse 5 says this, is, if any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask God, who gives generously to all. To all. All means you. You who are on your last effort trying to figure life out. You who are wondering what's going to happen to your marriage. You who are wondering what to do next with your kids. You who are wondering where that next paycheck is going to come from. God gives wisdom generously to all, without reproach. So if you ask God, it will be given. You see, Jesus as the wonderful counselor, Jesus has the wisdom you need for the life you're intended to live. The gap of the change that you desire and the change that you are experiencing, what closes that gap is the wisdom of Jesus. Because he has the wisdom for the life that you were intended to live. Not the one you're living now, the life that you were intended to live. You see, I have a counselor. I've had a counselor for 3 years, okay? Most of our staff goes to counseling. My wife's in counseling. Like, we are advocates of counseling. For so long in the church, it was like, you know, go to a counselor if something's really messed up with you. Well, I got a lot of things really messed up with me, so I go to counseling, but I go to counseling twice a month. His name's Clyde. If you want to know more about him, I'll tell you. I mean, just he's one of my best buds now, you know? Like, we talk a lot. I love counseling. I think everybody should be in counseling. I love my counselor, but as much as I love Clyde, Jesus is the only counselor with perfect wisdom. His wisdom is perfect, and it can be personal to us if we allow it to be. I actually asked Clyde this week. I had a session with him on Wednesday, and I said, "Hey, man, when I talk about Jesus as the wonderful counselor, what do you think?" And he says, "For me, I understand my place and position." He says, "I am an instrument, but Jesus is the ultimate." And so I think this is what we have, the invitation that we have from Jesus is to be counseled by him. But when I think about counseling, there's a couple of different options that we have. Option A, many of us take. Hey there. Not to you guys, to me, sorry. Just got really awkward. Many times we just sit with ourselves. We sit with ourselves. And we look in the mirror and we reflect on ourselves and we say, I can fix this on my own. The problem is, you are an awful counselor. I am an awful counselor. I am not a wonderful counselor, I'm a pitiful counselor. Right? Because the reason why is because we see what we see. But there are tons of things that are hidden from us, that we hide from ourselves. But as long as we sit with ourselves, we're just going to see what we see. And so guess what we're going to do is we're going to see what we want to see and tell ourselves the things we want to hear. Right? So, but that's, most of us do this because for the exact reason that if I share what's going on in my life with somebody else, maybe they'll judge me. If I let God in to what's going on in my heart, he's probably never going to love me. And so we just stick here and look in the mirror and say, maybe I'll figure it out one day. Tomorrow will be different. And guess what? Tomorrow's the same. And it may feel different and it may look different, but it's the same mentality as I'll fix this. Or the other option is you can sit with someone. Now this is Jonatas, or is it Gentle Giant? Yeah. So Jonatas is, he's a friend. We've known each other for how long? Sorry, I'm putting you on the spot. 4 years? It seems like forever. Now this isn't necessarily a bad thing to have a friend that you sit with and, for counsel to share things with, But the problem is that sometimes, this is what we do most of the time, is we look for people who are like us. And we usually sit with people, or we want to sit with people who are going to tell us what we hear, what we want to hear. So there's really no difference between us sitting in a mirror and us sitting with a friend. Now, sometimes that friend is going to be a good counselor. I'm not saying that, so please don't hear me like I can never have friends again, okay? I'm not saying that. But this can't be the ultimate go-to. This is a source of this. Jonatas can be an instrument to point me to health and healing, but he can't be the ultimate, right? So this is option B. So option A, I sit with myself. Option B, I can sit with people, right? Not necessarily a bad thing unless those people, you're finding people to put in your life that are just going to tell you what you want to hear. Then that's not a good thing. All right? Thanks, man. By the way, you're not one of those people that tell me what I want to hear. I appreciate you. All right. The option C is we're going to use this book, the Bible, holy inspired scripture, God's messages to us, God's word to us. It's actually, I think, his greatest source of counseling for us. We're going to use this as as to represent him, but you can sit with the wonderful counselor. Now, you're going to be tempted to sit there, and some of you will sit with a friend, and that's going to be okay. But if you never sit with the wonderful counselor, then you'll never experience the change that God intended you to experience. But there's some things that I'm learning. I haven't learned. I'm not there yet, but I'm learning about if I want to experience the change that Jesus offers in the life that he intended for me to live. There's some things some questions that I've got to say yes or no to, and I think you have to say yes or no to. The first thing is this: are you willing to be completely honest? Because if you're not, this will never work. If you won't come to the table with all that you are, then you're never going to experience all that Jesus has to offer you. Every counselor will tell you that until you're completely honest about your problems, you can't really get help. And so what Jesus says is, I want to change you, but you've got to be completely honest with me. You see, God is not going to change your life without changing you first. He's not going to change your surroundings, your experiences, your relationships without first changing you. And so you've got to come to the wonderful counselor and say, I'm ready to be completely honest. Which brings us to our next question. If you're going to sit with the wonderful counselor, you've got to ask yourself, do you really want to change? There's this story that Jesus comes up to a lame man in the Bible, and he says, hey, I'm going to, he asked for healing. And Jesus asked him, he says, do you really want to be healed? See, many of us want the experience of healing, but we don't want the process and to take the steps that associate with that healing. And so we don't want to go on the journey of change. We just want Jesus to fix it right away. And so most of us, we don't really want a change. We just want a quick fix. If you're going to sit with a wonderful counselor, do you really want to change? Because many of us say, I want to change, but our behaviors never do. And so we wake up and we'll say, I want to change my life. I want to change my marriage. I want to change my heart. I want to change my mind. But we wake up the next morning, we'll wake up tomorrow morning, and we'll do the same things we did today that got us the results that we're experiencing now. So we like the concept of change, but we're not really sure we want to do the hard work of change. We want God to clean up the mess of our lives without dealing with the choices and patterns that got us into that mess. So my question is, if you're going to, and I hope you will, do you really want God to change your life? By that I mean, do you really want to change? And the last one, if you're going to sit with the wonderful counselor, the question you have to answer is, are you ready to do whatever he says? Are you going to be completely honest? Do you really want to change? And if so, man, yes, let's go. The question is, are you ready to do whatever he says? You see, all throughout this, it's story upon story of God asking people to do very weird things to experience the change that he wants for them in their life. Like there's one man that's blind and he says, hey, rub this mud on your eyes. Jesus may say, hey, the change that you want to experience means you're going to have to extend forgiveness to someone you would rather get back. The change that you experience or you want to experience is going to mean that you have to ask for forgiveness from someone that you've hurt. Maybe for some, that change that Jesus is going to ask you is that he's going to ask you to end that dating relationship, even if it means that you're going to be alone. This season, Jesus is going to come to you and say, hey, I want you to give sacrificially to this, whatever that is. And you're going to be questioned with, well, what if we can't afford it? You see, here's the question that I always get confronted with when I sit with my counselor, but whenever I sit with the wonderful counselor. It's the question of, do I really trust that God will provide? Do I really trust? Do I really trust that God can handle this? Because James, when he talks about the wisdom that God wants to give us generously, he doesn't end with that first verse. Here's what he says, verse 5, he says, if any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask God, who gives generously to all without reproach, and it will be given him, which sounds amazing. But then he says, but let him ask in faith, with no doubting. For the one who doubts is like a wave of the sea that is driven and tossed by the wind. You see, when you ask God, when you sit with the wonderful counselor, when you say, I'm going to be honest, I want to be changed, and I'm willing to do whatever you want me to do, you've got to be ready to do what he says when he asks for you, when you ask for the wisdom that you need. It's almost like this. Before you even sit down with the wonderful counselor, you just go ahead and put your yes on the table. You just go ahead and put the yes on the table. It's the only way to truly trust God and experience the change that the wonderful counselor has for you. So one of the first sessions I ever had back in 2020 with beginning of 2021, with my counselor, he was asking me some questions, just some personal questions, and I started beating around the bush. I was like, yeah, maybe so, like I started, when your voice gets really high and you're like, you don't want to really be honest, and he put his paper down and he says, hey, listen, man, we can sit here all day long, but you're not going to get anything out of this until you're willing to put everything into it. You see, some of us, and I've been here in this room, really like the idea of Jesus changing everything. But you're saying, well, there's a couple things, though, that I can't give you, that I can't share. And you will never experience the change from the wonderful counselor until you say, God, you can have everything. You can have everything. In other words, if you want to see everything changed, you've got to put everything in. The incredible thing about Isaiah's announcement, his Christmas announcement, is for those people, it was an announcement. But for us, because Christmas reminds us that Jesus was born, he lived a life, a pure life, a sinless life, died on a cross for our sins, and rose again, making all of these announcements that were 700 years beforehand actually true. And Isaiah's announcement for them becomes an invitation for us to experience the wisdom of the wonderful counselor. The question is, will you receive the invitation today? For some, that invitation is going to sit with the wonderful counselor for the very first time. For you to come to Jesus and say, I'm going to be completely honest with you. I've been trying to fix my life on my own for my entire life, and today I realize that that's sin, and that sin has been keeping me from you. Well, today I'm asking for forgiveness. I believe you died on the cross for my sins. I want to sit with you, Jesus, the wonderful counselor, for the rest of my life. And it's you giving your life to Jesus, just like that. For others of us, it's an invitation to get away from sitting with ourselves and coming back to sitting with the wonderful counselor. Whatever that invitation is, unless we respond, we will continue to live the life that we've been living instead of the life that Jesus intended for us.